Welcome, everyone, to episode 7 of the Quill and Tankard.
And just as a heads up, this podcast is spoilers extended, meaning it covers all the episodes of Game of Thrones, but no leaks, and all the books of A Song of Ice and Fire, including the Winds of Winter sample chapters.
This week, we're going to talk about episode 4 of Game of Thrones Season 7, entitled The Spoils of War. I am one of your hosts, Michael, aka Bookshelfstud.
And I am another one of your hosts, Eliana, aka Glass Table Girl.
We're joined by some special guests today, including...
I'm Fat Walda, also known as Kibbles and Bits.
I'm Aaron, I'm AdmiralKird. I've been around.
You're not really a guest.
Yeah, he's not special.
No,
You've
he's
been on
not
every
a guest.
You've been on every episode.
I don't know what I am.
You're like
Yeah.
Todd in BoJack Horseman, but useful.
All these references, I can't keep up with them. These callbacks are so
Yeah.
dense.
So much going on.
Who is this mysterious voice that we're hearing?
What's up, guys? I'm Jeff, better known as BryndenBFish. Happy to be guesting again with you guys and ready to ruin this podcast.
Happy was in quotation marks, just so
Right.
everyone knows.
It was in air quotes.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, we
Oh, I need to turn my uhs up to 10 because Matt's not here.
I know, you don't have your backup. Woes in stereo.
That's right. We are missing Matt Joe Magician. We're missing Joe Magician, aka Matt, today.
He's with Ghost.
He's with Ghost. That's right. He's currently with Ghost. He's on the cutting room floor.
We didn't have the budget to have Matt on the
Yeah.
show tonight.
Matt is actually an elaborate CGI prop that we use. When we do the cast, he's just a tennis ball on a stick. But when you guys hear it, it's his beautiful voice. Anyway, so he's not here tonight. So the episode picks off like right where the last one left off at Highgarden, which doesn't look nearly as impressive as I hoped it would, but that's okay. It's fine. And we have Jaime and Bronn doing their usual banter that they've become so famous for.
I was pretty disappointed before everything starts. I was disappointed that we didn't get Casterly Rock and Highgarden in the intro
Yeah,
that
That's
would have been
it.
cool.
yeah.
We still got Pike.
because we didn't. Yeah, we keep getting Pike, and I don't know why we're getting Pike.
What's
it's
the
not
deal?
like we're at Pike.
Well, they wanted to maintain the surprise
Yeah,
about the attack on Highgarden, so they didn't want to put it in the
but this
intro.
episode.
But now that
Yeah.
it's... So
Yeah.
they weren't going to go to Casterly Rock this episode because Grey Worm isn't going to free Edmure because Edmure is not at Casterly Rock either, and who knows where he
Who
is
knows?
now.
Hashtag Where's Edmure
Where's Edmure?
2017.
Here's an idea. Why don't they use Old Town as a stand-in for the Reach as a region? Because you have the Wall in previous seasons stood in for events that were occurring north of the Wall. There was no Fist of the First Men
Yeah.
that
That's
kind of
true.
got built up, which would have been cool, but they could have used Old Town as a regional stand-in in lieu of Highgarden or, I guess, Casterly Rock.
Wasn't Old Town in this?
It was.
The alternative is to say the Reach and put it on Old Town like they do with Dorne and Sunspear.
Right.
I think that's a bad alternative.
I think
True.
that's
Yeah.
really reaching. But
Oh, goodness. We haven't even gotten to the actual episode and we're already making Jeff sigh. We're on the title sequence.
I'm still holding out hope that Casterly Rock might still appear.
It just doesn't seem important anymore, right? I mean, I guess Grey Worm's there, but that's it. It doesn't sound like he's going to be there for long.
I heard Jaime is screwing the small folk or something.
What?
Well, I mean, he is. So, I mean, he's screwing the small folk, but he's having all of the Tarly men go out and raid the granaries, and he's sending Bronn, a black-hearted sellsword, out to go steal basically all the produce from the people in the Reach, and with winter coming. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
it's messed up, Jaime. And for those who are more enjoy Jaime from the books, it does kind of contrast a bit from the Jaime who's telling people to plant and pray for another harvest instead of going around and looting their crops. These little kind of subtle differences do kind of stand out after a while because they kind of pile on each other in terms of how Jaime is different in both mediums.
Definitely, yeah. It was kind of casual, too, how they just sort of offhandedly ordered. I mean, that could have been a whole subplot by itself, like stealing grain from the small folk, but they're just moving too fast for that now.
Oh, it's not just that he was getting him to hand it over. He was sending Bronn off to make sure they handed it over with possibly Bronn tactics.
Mm-hmm. He's going to use both his brains and his brawn.
Well, it was played for laughs as well, right? It's played as kind of this humorous scene of Bronn going out to go loot, someone else's. I guess you could see the humor in it, but at the same time, it's kind of like it's not necessarily a funny scene. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
It's dark. Yeah, that's some dark humor.
Yeah.
No pun intended. They opened up the episode, though, with this taste of food. One of the users on the sub pointed out, though, that it was a recurring theme. It was a post that didn't get much attention from Tonk Daddy 14.
Ooh, Tonk Daddy 14.
That's exactly how many Tonk Daddies I like.
Tell me.
Well, obviously we banned the other 13, so this is the 14th now. They're talking about how this is coming up again and again. Westeros is dwindling food resources. Mm-hmm. How you've got Sansa's talking about making sure they have enough food for the winter. Jaime sending the Tarly boys out to collect new harvest. When Dany attacks with Drogon, we get a focus shot of destroying the supply train intended to feed the South and their army. Yeah. They turned it then and they say it's raising a lot of questions about where the plot is going. And that thinking about, I felt as though Gurm would rather have a man/feudal society be its own downfall than an army of mysterious necromancers. Thinking about the fact that this lack of food is really going to come back and bite them in the ass. More so than others or dragons.
And I agree. I mean, it kind of seems like they're going towards that in the books, too. Not that I have any specific quotes, but I have the impression from the things that I've read.
Yes.
Have you read the books? Have you read the books?
Oh, wait, no, Jeff, you weren't here. Last episode, we established that none of us have read the books. None of us have watched the show. We don't watch Game of Thrones. I
experienced the series solely through Reddit posts, yeah.
I don't know how to read.
Who wrote this crap in the document about when is it going to snow south of the wall?
That was me, okay? I'm just not crap.
We saw it snow south of the wall in the first episode.
Oh.
Arya.
South of the neck.
I meant south of the... Oh,
Arya,
okay, I was writing...
And
look.
With the hound.
It's a typo, okay? I meant south of the neck, all right? Not south of the wall.
You typoed 4 letters.
Because it's snowing in a...
Well, they were south of the neck.
Where is it snowing south of the neck?
Beric and Sandor and all them, they were south of the neck.
Were they? That was like in the mountains of Vale.
It's like the Vale.
In the mountains.
Like the eastern
it's different.
Side
it's different if it's in the mountains, because you'd naturally expect snow to occur in the mountains.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't naturally occur in the mountains. It falls from the sky
okay,
down.
Right.
No, I'm pretty sure that snow comes through the mountain, like osmosis.
I think it comes up from the ground.
Only if it's shaped like an arrowhead.
All I'm looking for, and when I watch the show, I'm waiting for that moment that you see at the end of A Feast for Crows, where Jaime's in River Run and the first flakes of snow start falling around him.
Oh yeah.
And then you see it in the Dance with Dragons epilogue, where Kevin Lannister and Grand Maester Pycelle are walking through, knee-deep snow in King's Landing. Like that's what I'm looking for, is because it does represent, the onslaught of the others. That the others are coming, and that winter and the snow and all that has a very visceral impact of showing us that death is coming for all these people. And so when you have a scene where, Jaime's sending Bronn and the Tarlys out to go steal everyone's food, it would really kind of like make it that much more impactful if you had like snow falling at the same time, because you're basically saying, screw the small folk. These people are all going to die, and we're going to ensure they die faster. I mean, that to me speaks much more, I've used the same word again, viscerally, in terms of storytelling in the show. And I don't mean to criticize the show necessarily for this point, because I know that probably doing snow, it might be hard. Might be harder to add that on the CGI, because you have to render every single snowflake, right? On or abouts.
Well, snow's actually, I think it's fairly easy.
Why wouldn't they just use practical effects for that?
Yeah, right.
But you kind of got snow in this episode because you got the ash from Drogon, which
True.
I mean that may be as close as you get for a while. I think that they may be saving that for some parallel for when Dany reaches King's Landing.
True.
Like it was in her vision. I don't know how much of that's going to be true at this point.
Yeah.
My family's from the Philippines. One time, one of the volcanoes erupted, but people didn't really realize that the volcano somewhere erupted, and they're like, wow, it's snowing. They're like, how is it snowing here in the Philippines? No, the volcano erupted and ash was falling from the sky. But apparently they thought it was kind of like snow.
Wow. So it is close enough that we could...
For people who don't grow up seeing snow.
I was going to say, had they seen snow before?
No. Not except through movies.
Speaking of King's Landing and the snow, there was no snow, but there was a Tychonosaurus of the Iron Bank chit-chatting with Cersei once again. Just genuinely impressed with her this time. Last time, Eliana, you had asked that question, are we supposed to take that as face value, the show telling us that Cersei is Tywin come again? That seems like this time, yes, Tycho Nestoris is genuinely impressed with Cersei.
Maybe he didn't necessarily believe it the first time, but now he's kind of like, actually, maybe I was totally wrong, and yeah, you are.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible.
In the next episode, when the gold doesn't come through, he's gonna be like, I take it all back!
No, the gold made it. The gold
the gold was way ahead of the food.
Oh, it did?
Mm-hmm. I said the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Randall says at the beginning of his scene that all the gold has made it through the gates of King's Landing before the attack begins.
Does Highgarden really have enough money to pay off all of the Iron Throne's debts?
Seriously. That's like several million gold, right?
Because Tycho Nestoris says that they'd never had someone pay off their balance in one lump sum.
Right. I don't see how they could practically have that much. Someone out there is going to do the math on like how much gold that would mean and just how ridiculously wealthy the Tyrells would have to have that much cash on hand, because that's a lot of money.
Well, when you don't pay your army...
That's why they were such crappy fighters.
They didn't have any defense budget, basically. So they do mention in this scene, speaking of gold, the Golden Company, which is an odd name to drop at this point in the story, I think, right?
You cannot believe how excited I was when they dropped the Golden Company name again.
I can believe it.
You can believe it, but
It means Fagon's coming into the story.
No. It means Cersei is Fagon.
Oh.
Well, people are saying Varys he's going to turn cloak somewhere.
Varys is Fagon!
What?
No.
Is Illyrio Mopatis just going to show up with Fagon?
Yes.
No.
Like with 6 episodes remaining at the end of
So it wasn't actually the first time the Golden Company has been in the show itself. If you recall to season 4 and season 5, the Golden Company signs up with Stannis after he gets the loan from the Iron Bank of Bravos. And then they abandon him just before the battle, quote unquote, of Winterfell. And so they are in the show. I guess the assumption is they fled back to Essos after Stannis lost outside of Winterfell.
Well, the first time the Golden Company is mentioned in the show is back in season 4 when Davos comes to Stannis and recommends that they hire them in order to continue the War of the Five Kings, and Stannis rebukes him, saying, like, they're sellswords. I hate them. Which he already hired Salador Sand back in season 2 to help him take King's Landing, who is a sellsword.
True.
So none of that makes any sense at all. And then later when he marches up to the wall and on Winterfell, after he gets the money from the Iron Bank, Stannis never refers to them as the Golden Company. He just keeps referring to them as sellswords. So it's not really confirmed or denied in the show that he ever got the Golden Company. I mean, they might retcon it. They might make it the Golden Company, but they probably won't. At the time, they didn't feel fit to ever mention it as being like some sort of plot point.
It's plausible that they would have joined with Stannis and then abandoned him just as the battle was about to go south.
Maybe if they wanted to do some more Stannis shaming, because the Golden Company shows up. It's like, yeah, we followed this guy up at Winterfell, but then we took off because he burned his own daughter.
Yeah.
What a crazy...
Can't wait for that scene.
But the Golden Company's it's interesting for book readers because we assume, a lot of people do anyways, that the Golden Company will end up facing off against Daenerys anyways, because the Golden Company will be at the forefront of Aegon's army, and we assume that Aegon and Dany are going to engage in some sort of second dance of the dragons in either Winds or A Dream of Spring. Not to get too much in the weeds, but they function as a very effective fighting force against someone like Daenerys Targaryen.
Yeah. They
have all of these different parts of the company itself, which are, if pitted correctly against Dany's forces, have the ability to offset some of her advantages. They've got spears, which are sort of a match for the Unsullied. They have elephants, if they bring elephants, and I'm not saying they're going to bring elephants into this show, though that'd be cool. It would kind of offset the advantages that the Dothraki have in all their cavalry. Allegedly, horses don't like the smell of elephants, and they'll actually flee from elephants on a battlefield.
Is this true?
Yeah, well, it's allegedly. I've read that from the Battle of Zama, where Scipio defeated them. That he put his horses behind him or something like that, so they wouldn't charge through his lines. Then they have these really great archers too, which they could use against the dragons possibly, but don't know if any of that's going to come up or whether that's just too in the weeds for the show. It seems like it's something that would be way, way beyond what they're willing to feature at this point as they kind of sprint towards the finish line. Yeah,
the combined arms tactics doesn't seem like it's going to be a major plot point, but it's still something that could play out on the screen if a cool-looking army that moves in an advanced fashion compared to like the Lannisters just marching towards something.
Yeah.
Jeff, why did the Lannisters have two groups of horses like inside the middle of their infantry when they approached Highgarden?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, you would generally put your cavalry on the flanks, right? Because
Flicks.
you're supposed to fix flank and then it's called fix, flank, and finish is kind of the doctrinal way they talk about it. So you're supposed to fix your incoming army that's attacking you and then flank them, encircle, and then finish them or destroy them in the process. That's kind of what they're supposed to. So it didn't make some of the formations, all the formations didn't make sense to me.
Maybe that's their victory formation.
Their victory formation.
Speaking of gold, Littlefinger, who was the master of coin, sits down and has a chat in what some of the moderators are apparently in the planning document calling Creep Bowl. Who's responsible for that, by the way?
Oh, that was me. Yeah, I typed that in.
Creep Bowl. Littlefinger and Bran, head to head.
I did like the Chris watches Game of Thrones. Littlefinger brought a knife to a creep fight.
The breakdown is pretty funny.
What is Littlefinger do? Like, what is he still doing around? I mean, I know why he's around in the show, but why is he still around? You know?
Yeah, right.
What I'm wondering about is, like, so clearly Littlefinger isn't really backing Jon, right? And he's backing Sansa because he's a creep. And he's super creeping on Sansa. But then he brings up to Bran how much he loved Catelyn. Does Littlefinger, in fact, like, yeah, he's being creepy, but does he also, in fact, have some sort of sympathy towards Bran as, like, oh, the woman I love, ish, but, like, maybe I don't really know what love is, but I think I know what love is, was your mother, and thus he, like, actually, in some ways, wants Bran to succeed in whatever that means?
I mean,
that's what I'm wondering.
He told Bran that if he could have been there, that he would have taken the knife for, in his heart or whatever for his mother. And like my headcanon, I actually kind of like Littlefinger's. I know it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. It might be Aidan Gillen for me, but I can believe that Littlefinger actually would have some affection toward Kat's children.
It's kind of like a duality.
Cartesian duality.
He's like the creepy stepdad.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like a weird father role to Bran for him. He's like, here's the ancestral weapon, except it's completely perverted because he's handing Bran the weapon that was going to be used to kill Bran.
Littlefinger would have taken that. Catelyn was in fact in the room. You know, her life was at stake. Catelyn told him and shows the scars on her palm. And so maybe Littlefinger would have been willing to take a knife to the heart to protect Catelyn. Not necessarily Bran, but like Cat was there.
So working off of the stepfather angle, which I think is a really interesting one, of all of the Starks or Snows that Littlefinger's encountered, Bran is the one he knows the least. So he's only heard about Bran. He's never met him before that scene. So to me, it read like Littlefinger was trying to feel Bran out and find out what he was into, if that makes sense. And so the first angle we went with was his mom, Catelyn, right? So he has this connection because he knows that Catelyn brought the knife down to King's Landing back in season 1. And knows that the knife was meant for Bran, but that's really all he knows about Bran, right? So he's trying to suss out some way, some angle that he can get into Bran's mind and start working on him. But it doesn't work. He's had years, well, at least a few years with Sansa now, a few months with Jon. Arya is going to be another wild card we'll get into later on, which is another situation where he's out of his element. He doesn't seem to know how to deal with Bran or with Arya either.
And, like, in the in-depth discussion thread that we put up every single week, and you can find it stickied after the episodes, user E1 Duder, regarding that, like, trying to feel Bran out thing, he says that Littlefinger is trying to curry favor with Bran by treating him like a normal 13-year-old, or however old Bran is. Boy, a normal kid would be super stoked to get a sweet dagger. Especially the one that was meant to kill him, but like, you know, and that's true, especially after what we see of Joffrey. Joffrey's like, sweet new weapon, let me hack the book.
Oh, it's just like Sweet Robin and the glass...
he's treating him like Falcon.
The glass falcon that he throws down the...
That's a great point.
Moon door.
That's a great point.
And then he replaces it later with a bigger falcon.
That he's like doing this thing where he just gives gifts to little boys because that's... Oh my.
Whoa.
When my sister was texting me about this episode, by the way, her phone kept correcting Littlefinger to Little Dinger, which is the best Littlefinger nickname I think I've ever heard of. So, canonically, he's Little Dinger now.
Yeah.
Speaking of Little Dingers, in that same thread, user A Meat Popsicle pointed out that it did seem like Littlefinger is trying to get close to Bran as a way to supplant Jon. Like he's looking for these ways to sort of find a candidate who he can make his, and then get rid of Jon and put that person in charge.
Again, Littlefinger isn't, I don't know that he goes into any of this with any kind of plan. He just tries to see where he can get a foothold and then use it to his advantage when the time
That's a
pops
good
up.
point. He's like Gurm. He's throwing down seeds and seeing what sprouts, basically.
Yeah, in the same thread, like responding to a meat popsicle that you bring up, Jeff was just talking about Littlefinger being out of his element, and this user, really quite boring. I didn't think this was boring, though. Says, like, responds to someone saying that LF shouldn't have gone north, and he's saying that, like, it could be, in some ways, like, echoing how Ned meets his demise because he goes south and ends up out of his element. Littlefinger goes north and ends up out of his element, making a series of bad moves, like, he doesn't know how to be honorable, whereas the South values schemes, or, like, everyone's out of their element when it comes to magic. So,
yeah, exactly. The people took this reverse Ned thing to its logical conclusion. Pineapple 2727 points out that then they can sew an extra head onto Littlefinger at the end of the season. It's a way to really bring it full circle. In this episode, really magic bubbles up to the surface in every plot. Like, you have Littlefinger, who for 6 seasons has been able to sort of talk his way around things and get people to do stuff by giving them gifts, things like that. And then he comes up head to head against the magical plot, and he is just, like, he's bowled over. Bran knows everything. He says chaos is a ladder to him, and that just completely undoes him. And that keeps happening with every story. But
how does Bran know that?
Well, it's a good thing I have this other thread in our document.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
By user...
It's Welsh.
Do it. Do it.
By user... Sawam.
What?
SAWAMW. Sawamwa.
Sawamwa.
It's like the lion sleeps tonight.
You gotta get the wa at the end of Sawamwa.
No, yeah, so basically, he's talking about why Bran's the way he is. He talks about how Bran is unable to pick and choose what fragments he sees, and, like, that seeing certain things would prompt him to see certain memories. So, for example, he can't choose what he sees, but certain things will influence it, like Sansa plus snow plus Godswood equals wedding night. And then he sees Littlefinger plus chaos equals chaos is a ladder. So, because Littlefinger mentions it, that prompts Bran to, like, see that line, I guess. Chaos is a ladder. That's what the user Sawamwa is proposing.
So he's like a Google search.
Yeah.
Here's your keywords. And
yeah. Keywords. I like that. Good thread, Sawamwa.
Well, that transitions over to Mira Reed saying goodbye to Bran, which is a pretty brutal moment, really, for Mira, who's sacrificed so much to see Bran's journey prove successful, and she gets told thank you. That's the extent of what Bran does to thank her for all the horrors that she experienced on the road to the Cave of the Three-Eyed Raven and on back south, fleeing the White Walkers. And
that last line that Ellie Kendrick had, "You died in that cave." Very powerful line. Very good delivery.
Kind of the casual way they could have done is just cut from that line, right? And then, but they chose not to do that. They lingered on Bran for another, I'm going to call it 10 to 15 seconds, where he looks away, and I'm not sure what that is meant to communicate, whether Bran realizes that Mira's right, or whether there's something else at work, whether he's gravitating back towards his identity or something like that. I really like that lingering shot they have of Bran. It felt ambiguous to me, and I've been thinking about it a lot since the episode.
This is true. Maybe he's starting to boot up again.
I mean, maybe it's some post-traumatic stress. I mean, like, he just couldn't deal with everything, so he just shut off.
Do you think he's lying to himself about being the Three-Eyed Raven? I mean, I guess maybe not. Maybe he thinks that he has to become this character to defeat the White Walkers, but at the same venture, it feels like...
I think they thought of this thing in the writer's room, they had the line a long time ago where Jojen tells him the Three-Eyed Raven is you, but they didn't really express that in his personality at the end of last season, that Bran had gone through this massive transformation, especially because he goes back to see that memory. And he seems normal, he seems taken and emotionally grabbed by seeing little baby Jon. Maybe they thought of that, this personality change in between seasons where I don't know if they necessarily know where they're going with it when they came up with it. I kind of had this theory with Eliana on Twitter earlier that they switched Maisie and Bran's personalities from the Winds of Winter because they wanted to give Maisie more emotional, powerful material to work with. So while she's becoming like a psychopath in the Winds of Winter and going down this darker route, Bran is experiencing like all of these emotional heightened moments where he gets to feel all these people through the weirwood and their stories, and they're very sympathetic in all these feelings. So he really should have what Arya's personality is like in this episode.
Right, no, I totally agree with that. I think that in the very least, that Arya is acting like she hasn't been affected by this at all. Like her demeanor when she's fighting with Brienne and everything is like Arya before she set sail to Braavos, right? She's just very cocky and she's still, I mean, she has this hit list, but she had the hit list before she became a magic assassin. So like, I feel like her character hasn't undergone any transformation from the training that she got in the House of Black and White.
Well, I felt like at the end of season 4, even I hadn't read the books yet. Well, that was the point when I was reading through them. But the last scene that Arya has with the Hound is very cold and so unsympathetic towards Sandor as he's sitting there taking those wounds from Brienne, and it felt like this is the route that she was going down as far as like into becoming like more of a psychopath, disconnected from her emotions and the emotions of other people. And after that, then like she goes to Braavos, and I didn't really feel like Maisie had that much to work with in Braavos where she could really show off her acting, because Jaqen was very distant. And so she had a little bit of stuff with Lady Crane in there, but they really didn't give her much to work with. And now I feel like in these past, in episode 2 and episode 4, she's really had a lot to work with like Hot Pie again and with Sansa and stuff. And Maisie has just absolutely killed it.
You could make the point that Arya, being no one, would have transitioned through many different iterations of changing faces and would have all of these different kind of personalities embedded in her consciousness now. Because one of the things that is talked about in A Dance with Dragons is how when Arya changes her face, she's going to experience the emotions and some of the terrible and horrible things that some of these people have that died, and then their faces are now owned by the Faceless Men. You could see that where Arya would just not be able to quote unquote boot up necessarily, if that makes sense.
She's also being told to suppress those emotions when she puts on those faces. Like, you have to learn to deal with them, and you have to learn to keep these down. Whereas Bran's story, there's really not any of that from Bloodraven up in the Three-Eyed Crow's cave, where he's like, go back and experience these things.
There is a certain amount of that, but he does tell Bran straight up, like, don't bother trying to change the past. Like, you can't do that. I mean, it's different. He's not telling him to not get emotionally involved, but I'm just saying there is some of that, I think, for Bran. In sort of a remove yourself.
Bloodraven's teaching him to skin change into like birds and stuff, and he's like feel the way the bird flies and its emotions and that sort of thing, right? Doesn't he like tell him that? Experience it?
I mean,
well, but it's the thing with Ned and seeing Ned at the Godswood and all that, and
yeah,
there was a brother I loved and a brother I hated and a woman I loved, and I can't change anything about that. Like, the impression I got from Bloodraven, right, is like that he's jaded and he's like, don't get emotionally attached to this stuff.
I don't know if I see it as like, don't feel emotions. I see it as like, Bloodraven is essentially giving Bran the same lecture that Maester Aemon gave Jon when Jon first joined the Night's Watch.
It's like, this is a duty. This is a duty,
yeah.
And you can't let your feelings get in the way of that sort of thing.
And you're gonna feel things, but like, it's still like, and
duty.
as opposed to Jon, where Jon has to choose to not take an action, Bloodraven's like, yeah, I mean, it's gonna suck, but, like, you can't do anything. And the more you try to do stuff, the more it's gonna suck. So, just don't.
It's a butterfly effect, right?
Great pep talk.
There you go. Conceal, don't feel.
Yeah. Let it go.
We are in the snow.
But Arya arrives at Winterfell this episode.
No way.
Whoa.
On National Sisters Day, apparently.
Spoiler alert.
According to D&D, it was a callback to Odysseus and returning home and nobody recognized him, I guess.
No, I didn't see that because Odysseus would have slain everyone when he got home. He would have been like, all right, first we're going to talk about my bedroom. Let's talk about my bedroom. And then I'm going to kill everyone except for the dog.
Well, the dog would just disappear and they couldn't find it.
That's true. She says to the dog, that's not you. And it was clearly a callback to season 1, and they should have just left it at that because it was great. It was a perfect callback. Everyone got it that was a callback to season 1 when Arya tries to re-enter. I believe it's the Mudgate, and that was great. Well done.
Right.
Good job.
This is a little too long.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with that. For a half second, I thought that they were going for that scene from A Clash of Kings where Arya, approaches the Bolton Guard out of Harrenhal and just straight up murders this guy, right?
Yeah.
Like he drops the coin and then she slices his neck. I
That
thought that's what they were going
Odysseus
for.
move.
Yeah, well, that would have been much more.
That would have been the Odysseus move to do.
But I mean, I didn't think it was a bad scene by any stretch.
Yeah.
I just thought it was going in a different direction than the one it actually went.
This is coming up, but
Yeah.
Arya reunites with Sansa, and she says, "You need better guards." And all I could think of in the moment is, you know who needs better guards? HBO needs better guards.
Damn.
That line would have worked if
Was
she'd
this some
killed him,
meta
too.
commentary?
Okay,
True.
I really like this theory. It's pretty brief. It's by user OMG Brookberry. And the title is, "You Can't Protect Me, No One Can." That's what Sansa Stark says to Jon Snow. She's like, "You can't protect me, no one can." But Arya is no one. If Sansa needs better guards, maybe Arya will protect her.
There you go. That's a good theory.
I like that theory. It's simple.
There
Yeah.
we go. I'll take it, yeah. So Sansa and Arya do reunite this episode, which is awesome. The crypts was a good decision, I think.
Yeah.
They've been getting a lot of mileage out of the crypts and Ned Stark's statue. Including the fact that apparently the statue's crappy in universe. I'm kind of glad.
Was this a Matt Damon Team America moment where they're crapping on their own sculptor? Yeah, this guy's terrible. Looks nothing like him.
I think that's exactly what it was.
I guess it was so dark in there, maybe they figured it didn't matter.
I thought it looked a lot like Ned.
Me too.
There was a likeness.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I'm his kid, I guess I'd be it doesn't look anything like him. But it kind of looks like him.
Because it has a head.
Oh. I mean, even in our real world, a lot of the royal portraits that you have of people and sculptures don't look like them.
Like all those Beyonce wax figures
Yeah.
that don't actually look like Beyonce.
Or a lot of the royal
Don't have her skin color.
a lot of the royal portraits look way better than those people really looked.
Mm.
Ye old Photoshop.
Yeah, I'm thinking what was it, Charles V or something?
Yeah, the Habsburg.
Yeah, Philip II's father.
The jaw guy.
Yeah.
Arya asks about Bran. They talk about Bran. They talk about Jon. Robb gets a mention, I think. Rickon has not been name dropped at all.
Where's
this
Rickon
season,
at?
I think.
Where's the boy at, String? Where's Rickon?
Oh my god.
My headcanon is there is a scene in between where they walk to go talk to Bran and they bring up Rickon.
Yeah.
And in the next scene, Arya is kind of morose. So maybe that was shot and it was cut because she learned about Rickon's death, but they just decided to cut it.
I saw some people on the sub who were like, well, maybe he's already interred in the crypt, and so she saw Rickon, but she didn't see Bran, and so she was surprised about Bran.
See, this is my problem with that sort of in theory is that it's a great meta reading of what might have happened, but it's not featured in the freaking story.
Right.
So you can't. I mean, it's a good theory, but there's no way that's ever going to be proved because they've moved beyond the narrative beyond that story.
Right.
point.
It's just really making up for a mistake.
Yeah, it's already past.
Yeah, they should have a thingy for Rickon.
Yeah, they need to get their Rick on.
Well, there's also the line when Arya shows up to the guard. They say, "Lady Stark's in charge," and she says, "Which Lady Stark?" I'm like,
it's not your mother.
It's you and your sister. Your mom is dead.
Yeah.
You probably heard that Talisa is dead. Unless there's a missing plot where Jon gets married in a span of an episode and he has a mystery wife that they cut from the show.
Could have
Yeah, that's true. Arya doesn't know that Jon Snow
though.
didn't take a wife as
Still wouldn't be a
King in the
Stark.
North.
Well, she doesn't know that he's not a Stark,
The guard said Jon Snow.
Yeah. So then we have a nice scene with the 3 Stark siblings hanging out by the weirwood, which I just, the other nice thing about this season and all the plots converging and things sort of, they can linger on the Starks for 15 straight minutes of the episode.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which we didn't get at all in seasons 5 and 6. You'd be lucky to get 5 straight minutes of a single story. But we got Starks for days.
I think maybe that's why this episode felt so good, is because it was more cohesive
Yeah, I agree. Like, getting to spend more time in each region and actually, like, build it out. And I actually just wanted more stories about the North and the siblings, like, getting together. And then we had to go somewhere else, I guess, whatever.
You know, dragons.
I think what helped last episode quite a bit was that Arya wasn't there, because we didn't have to cut to her having, like, a scene down with somebody else in an ancillary arc in the Neck, and this scene, Arya is finally back with people where her story matters.
I agree.
Where it's not a sidetrack for the first time since probably season 1, almost, in some ways. It's not so much season 2 or 3, but...
One of the criticisms of the show, at least this season, is how fast they're pushing forward towards the end game. But the moments that they slow the story down and they have these scenes, long scenes with Arya and Sansa in the Winterfell crypts and Arya, Bran, and Sansa at the Heart Tree in Winterfell, it really shows and displays the creativity that the writers truly possess behind it, because it is something, it allows the viewer to marinate in the emotions that they've built up over 6.5 seasons of Game of Thrones, and marinate also in these characters that they've come to love and care about, and seeing them together, because, you know, you don't, as much as you might disagree with decisions that the characters make, you don't want to see Arya, Bran, and Stark go down or suffer these terrible things that happen to them. Seeing them at the Winterfell, at the Godswood, was really moving and touching, and kind of a simple scene, but it really struck a chord in me. I rewatched the scene a few hours ago before we started recording, and I felt even more emotional watching it the second time than I did last night when I watched it for the first time. If that makes sense.
Well, that's because you're a pansy.
That's true. That's true.
How bleeding heart.
These three, between them, know more than probably anyone else in Westeros about just everything that's going on, honestly. Sansa was, like, there for some really important events, including the true story of what happened behind the War of the Five Kings. Arya was there at Harrenhal with Tywin. Bran obviously knows everything. Like, they combined. I'm assuming that off screen between episodes 4 and 5, they're just talking to each other and getting up to speed.
They have to compensate for Jon Snow knowing nothing.
True.
That's what
Very
true.
Yes.
Good.
Excellent point.
I was going to say it's kind of ironic that this episode so far this season felt the most lingering and the most like it was breathing and taking its time, and yet it was the shortest episode ever of Game of Thrones.
True.
Yeah.
Well, Bran gave Arya...
Oh,
yeah, Bran gives the Valyrian steel dagger.
I'm gonna just like go on that tangent and talk about how great Maisie Williams' acting is in that scene.
Yeah.
Just because, like, Bran's like, oh yeah, Cersei was on your list. And then, like, the way Maisie looks at Sophie Turner, yeah, I really had a list. That wasn't a joke. And please still love me. Please still accept me. And, like, it was all conveyed in her face and it was just so well done. And
the joke, too, between Sansa wondering, it seemed like that Sansa was asking Arya if she was on Arya's list at the end of that scene, too.
Oh, really? I didn't get that impression.
That sort of it was like kind of half joking is the way I read it is like, who else is on your list?
Yeah.
And then with the kind of the smile sort of thing. To me, it read like that.
Because that's like an old Arya move. That's like a Arya from season 1 move to like as a little kid be like, Sansa's on my list. But this is older Arya who's like, yes, no, I legitimately kill people, and I have a list of people I'm going to kill and murder.
You got anyone you want me to add?
Sansa's like,
yeah. But like Arya's eyes don't say
it's
that.
It's like a shopping list.
Her eyes there are just like asking for forgiveness and acceptance despite everything.
Yes. So. Yeah. Maisie Williams is just like killing it this season.
I really enjoyed too Sophie Turner, like Sansa figuring everything out, right? She's in the crypts and she's like, yeah, I'm the Lady of Winterfell now. And they're getting to know each other again, and she's trying to explain what's happening with Bran to Arya, and then the list comes up again, and Littlefinger, they're talking about Littlefinger. And then, like, in the next scene, when Arya and Brienne are sparring, and Sansa is just trying to take all of this in.
So speaking of that scene with Arya sparring, shout out to Joanna Robinson.
Man, she's awesome.
Went through and found, she got GIFs of every single echo in the fight scene, calling back to previous fight scenes for Arya.
That's
so
cool.
When she's... like the stuff she learns from Syrio, obviously, but then when she's with the Hound and she's trying to spar with him and she just like stabs him right in his armored belly and he laughs at her and punches her, she no longer goes after Brienne's belly. She's going after her joints and her legs and stuff. She gets up and dodges things just like the waif did in Bravos. she ends by pointing out that she's dressed exactly like Ned was dressed the last time Arya was with Ned, and has her hair done exactly like
That's cool.
Ned had his hair done.
That's super cool.
I felt like that was familiar.
And it's Ned's hair. It's Ned's hairstyle. And Sansa's actually wearing Catelyn's hairstyle from season 1. Or one of them.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't seen season 1 in a long time, but the where Sansa and Littlefinger are standing is the same place that Catelyn and Ned Stark were standing when they were watching Bran, Robb, and Rickon fire the arrows into the this is like the second scene of the entire show, right?
Bran, Robb, and Jon.
Yeah.
Bran, Robb, and Jon, yeah.
I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe those scenes were shot in a different location, and they later moved it to this set.
But it's definitely evoking that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah, it's totally calling to it.
Brienne, Gwendolyn
Christie
Captain Phasma.
would absolutely eat Arya for breakfast.
She was being easy on her. She was underestimating her.
Yeah,
both
like
are
just
true.
the size difference there. I know they're like trying to say it kind of goes against earlier what Sandor said about because Trant had armor and a big effing sword. Brienne's like swinging wildly in this. She's letting Arya parry her attacks, and if she just closed with her in like half a second, she'd be able to shrug off that blade. I think they want to keep Arya having Needle in the show, and there are lots of theories that she might get Dark Sister in the books, which is an old Targaryen blade that Bloodraven had up in the cave. And some people are thinking that maybe the blade that Bran has that Littlefinger gave Bran, that Bran gave Arya, is going to be retconned into being Dark Sister.
Which it wouldn't be in the books, because Gurm has said that he now looking back on it, he wouldn't have made that a Valyrian steel dagger because it stands out too much. It's too ubiquitous.
I don't really think that it's going to be Dark Sister, because it would obviously be your sister.
Whoa.
I've been waiting all week for that one.
Oh my god!
Podcast.
Just set this up.
No,
that whole
I do
time.
think they could retcon it into being Dark Sister in the show. I would not be surprised. There was a recent thread that just popped up that Eliana, you linked on Twitter. That was by
I like that one.
user.
I thought that
retweeted
was
it as
cute.
well.
Yeah,
I thought
I
it
saw
was
you
great.
retweeted it. We're gonna find this thread. I promise.
The internet moves slow.
Promise me, Aaron. Promise me. The user is suggesting that Arya has a sword named Needle, and that Arya will name this dagger Thread, right?
Mhm.
And it's by user Rambaz710, and just saying that because it's a tiny dagger, and so that way Arya could be said to be sewing with needle and thread when she's fighting.
I think that's great. That puts a smile on my face.
I thought
That's
it was
cute.
cute. I love that.
I dig that.
Who
Yeah.
names their daggers?
We can't say
say
that.
We're not
word.
gonna say that.
You just had
Everyone,
lots of
like,
people name their daggers.
Everyone like inhaled at the same moment. We were all about to say that. We're like, we can't say that.
So someone in the planning document put something about the music at the end of this scene.
Yeah. At the very end of the scene, they do not play Littlefinger's music. When Littlefinger looks down, the Syrio Forel Faceless Man music.
Yes.
And when I was first
Yes.
watching the scene, I have not seen anybody else think this, but I thought that the way that the music implied it, and having Littlefinger watch Arya spar there and look down and smile, that they were implying that Littlefinger was Syrio Forel.
What?
Because of the way that he's looking down, he's smiling, and they're having her spar in front with Brienne, and he's seeing her sword play. And at the end of the scene, Arya says that no one taught her, but Syrio Forel wasn't a faceless man. But then there's this guy up on this balcony looking down, he smiles, and I had the impression that it was saying like it's a proud teacher looking at his student.
That is without a doubt the silliest possible conclusion to draw from that scene.
It was the music. They didn't play Littlefinger's music. Anytime Littlefinger glares at somebody, though, they play his music.
Well, he wasn't glaring though. He was looking super
smiling.
No, he was nervous.
It was an Arya triumph
It
moment,
was-
though. I mean, it's a
Or it's because Littlefinger has roots in Bravos, and Syrio Forel was the first sword of Bravos, and thus they're both from Bravos. But
You're way overthinking this.
No, it's
also
because
it's not
Syrio
that they're not
Forel
the
was a
same.
faceless man. No one taught her to fight like that.
And then you cut to Littlefinger, and we're doing all these cuts to like Jon Snow every time there's a Targaryen mentioned. Maybe it's just like written in my brain now. I'm supposed to think that the mysterious person they're talking about is...
So Syrio Forel is now the one creeping on Sansa? He just saw her one day in the Red Keep and was like, yo, I'm about that. And then he just like...
Syrio Forel has taken a liking to this girl.
A man has taken a liking.
Well, see, it would never work because Littlefinger pulls that dagger on Ned's throat, right? And then they send the gold cloaks up to grab Arya. And she's training at that moment with Syrio. Yeah. So there's no possible way that logistics work out. But the way it was implied with the music in the scene and the way everything is set up, you have to be a crazy person, but I'm a crazy person.
You're a crazy person.
But go watch it again and try and interpret that they're like trying to say that he's Syrio Forel. And you can see where you can see that.
To.
Wow.
I think he was smiling because he needs chaos, and like what better chaos.
He saw Sansa distrusting or being surprised by Arya and was like,
right. The little sister is a deadly killer.
A girl has learned to water dance.
So speaking of faceless men, we then move to Missandei on Dragonstone.
Nice.
That's a good segue. Missandei and Dany have the girl talk that was promised about Grey Worm. Surprisingly mild, actually. Not a lot gets said. And then they pan down to Jon, who's at the bottom of the stairwell, looking like a dog who just shat on the carpet. Jon stands the same way in front of Dany. And all these scenes, he's got his shoulders hunched and like his head kind of down.
Is he looking gormless?
He does look gormless.
He's also...
Of course he looks germless, because we don't have the next book, so we have no germ to go off of.
I mean, the way the scene is shot, too, is every single scene until they get into the cave itself is shot with Dany above Jon looking down on Jon. So it's the cinematography, too, that's communicating. Jon's does look like he's really out of his element with Daenerys Targaryen. And Dany is towering over him in every single scene until they get into the cave, of course.
So, yeah, Missandei and Dany, they exchange those girl talk looks, and they're like, yo, what's up with Grey Worm? And then Jon shows up, and then Dany gives Missandei a look like, yeah, we've been talking about this, like, that boy. We have had girl talk about Jon before.
Jon Snow, my.
Speaking of the Lord's kiss.
What I'm saying?
Would it be the King's kiss now? That's what I've been wondering. Everyone keeps calling it the Lord's kiss, and I'm just wondering.
Jon obviously leads Dany into the caves, which he has a pretty good track record with. I was a big fan of the cave paintings and stuff. I mean, I feel like you don't get enough prehistoric art in fantasy, which is weird because it's a good fantasy thing. It's a fun fantasy trope.
Apparently, literally no one believes that the Children of the Forest drew those. Like, everyone on the internet is like, Jon, did you draw these?
There's a picture of like a really well endowed man who looks suspiciously like Jon Snow.
No, that's my prophecy.
Oh wow! So, did you see this, Dany? That's crazy. With a big old dog, and it's like terrible. Like his eyes are crooked.
Yeah. Jon. I don't believe Jon's a talented artist either.
They look a lot like the petroglyphs that you'd see out west in. I say out west, like in the American Southwest, in the canyons and things like that out there. You see a lot of spirals and stuff like that.
As D&D said, those French caves.
The caves of Altamira?
Yeah, which is a great song by Steely Dan off the Royal Scan album. Holy heck. Oh my god. I spent my days alone.
So the cave drawings is something that seems a very likely pull from a Winds of Winter sample chapter that George R. Martin released back in 2016, which is from the perspective of Arianne Martell, where she's traveling north to Storm's End to meet up with Aegon, and her and her party stop in a cave in the Rainwood. There's a great post by a user Kraken War called "The Show's Slight Nod to a Book Scene with Arianne Martell," in which which Kraken War talks about how in that cave, Arianne goes with her friend and former lover, Daemon Sand, into the depths of the cave to look for Ilya Sand, who's wandered off into the caves. And they stumble across these...
Lady Lance.
Yeah, right, Lady Lance. And they stumble across these paintings that the Children of the Forest drew on the walls of the cave. And it's a really cool callback to that. And you were talking about earlier about how prehistoric times aren't generally featured in fantasy novels, but George R. Martin seems to have kind of forgone that, subverted the trope, so to speak, and has a and does have the Children of the Forest, these paintings in there. And it's really cool to see that actually visually depicted too. And cool catch by Krakenwerk there. And again, that Arian chapter I think is still on Martin's website as the sample for the Winds of Winter. So check it out.
Well,
It's a good
here's
one. Yeah.
Here's the dealio. On the inside of the episode, David Benioff is talking about this. There's what's called a ninja edit, where like somebody cuts away from something and they smash in other audio to then cover something up. And you can tell this very clearly on the inside of the episode because they also cut the video track at the same moment, because after this point, Benioff's lips wouldn't match up with what he's saying.
Okay.
So in this portion, it sounds like he's saying that George said blah, 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 and that they cut away from that, where he was going to say more about what was going to be in the books during this scene. Like, there's something that George had influence in here.
Interesting.
In this moment. At least that's my tinfoil about it.
Could it also just be that he, like, sneezed or whatever? And I mean, I don't want to take the wind out of your sail on that, but, like, could it be that he's just... like that they did cut, but there's some less Georgie reason for it.
The phrasing is weird. He makes it sound like they have no idea what it means when he's really saying that like the people would have no idea what it means.
I heard that as like almost like a DM or something who doesn't actually know what it means, but they're trying to like keep it ambiguous for the players. So they're like, "Oh, these cave paintings, they're so mysterious, right?" And they don't know what it means, but they're going to make up something good by the time the players need to know.
The line is, one of these things we learned about, smash cut, these cave paintings. Okay, so it sounds like he's saying one of these things that we learned about from George, these cave paintings. But then like there's more audio in here that may have been cut, where they were talking about something from the books and that they learned they shouldn't do that after a couple seasons ago.
You know what I kind of miss? If you guys remember from the behind the episodes from seasons 1 and 2, and I think 3, and actually 4 as well, because George wrote episode 2 for that, was where George would be a part of these behind the scenes featurettes talking about religions and the Faceless Men and different things. It'd be cool to have him back for some of this stuff. And obviously, it's understandable why he can't be there because the show is so far beyond where he is, where the narrative of the books ends. But it would be cool to have him talk about the cave paintings and what it means. And, you know, George is good in the answers that he gives. You know, you could go through the So Spake Martin archive and see that George is really good at answering questions that he wants people to think about. He provides a lot of ambiguous answers to things, or things like keep reading or things like that. And you do kind of miss out on that when George isn't there in the behind the episodes, and you have David and Dan who do okay work, I guess we can put it kindly.
Beyond the Ariane chapter, there's also this aspect to Dany's memories about the house with the red door, where she remembers seeing these animal faces carved.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is hella tinfoil. This is good.
The whole point of her remembering the house of the red door, as Eliana said before, is because it's this memory of like a better time that has long since passed, but there's an aspect where she may have like seen some cave paintings like this in the past and has contorted those memories from wherever she was in the world. I don't know.
Wow.
Very cool.
Really makes you think.
Everyone feels about Daenerys in this scene, because they do kind of play with the dynamic of Jon and Dany
They're
getting together.
Going hard on it. Like, pun intended. In the inside the episode, right? He says something about like there's clear attraction or something like that.
Yeah, obvious chemistry there.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't feel the chemistry.
Yeah,
I don't.
It seems like it's two attractive people in a room together.
Yeah,
but like I don't know, like Ygritte and Jon, you could feel that, you know.
Well, partially because they were, and they still are, I believe, dating in real life. It does feel very much like Michael, you said, like two attractive people in a room together, and so obviously they're going to get together. Although it does present the idea that they're both at an impasse, right? They can't, Jon's not going to bend the knee, and Dany requires Jon to bend the knee. What's the way that you actually solve that? Well, you have two single people, two single rulers, call it, and now they'll get together. They form a marriage alliance, and that's how they solve their problems. At least that's how it reads to me. It seems like that's the solution that the show is driving towards, because they have to find a way around her through their differences.
if they're trying to show the attraction between the two of them, there should be a little bit of flirting.
There was flirting.
Just at least a
No,
little
there
bit.
was flirting. So A, there's the look that Dany gives Missandei. B, in the cave. Like, this is not a thing that, like, people just do. Jon puts his arm around Dany and moves her wrist with the fire over somewhere else. That's flirting.
That's playing pool.
And then Dany takes another step, and then another step. They just keep getting closer physically. And to me, that's flirting.
That's playing pool.
The other way, too, they do it is when they're walking out of the cave, it looks like Jon and Dany are walking out hand in hand from the cave. And then it pans out and it shows that they're not actually holding hands. But I did see that, and it did visually register as maybe some visual foreshadowing of what's going to happen.
Well, they did have, at least, they had, Missandei was in there, right?
That's
like,
fair.
they had a chaperone.
In the cave? We did see Missandei.
She didn't catch up to him, though.
Yeah, she gave them some alone time.
She got lost.
Yeah, she probably found Bloodraven's cave.
She knew the dragon glass was code for dragon ass. Am I?
She was looking for spots to hang out with Grey Worm when he got back,
Yeah.
before he hacked it to bits.
Scouting out, yeah. She's doing the only reconnaissance in the show.
They could have sold the paintings a bit more if Jon had already started digging and they found this entire room, like, buried inside the cave that had been, like, cut off. It was explained, like, why Stannis had never seen it, mentioned it, and stuff like that.
But then the implication is that Jon and Davos have just been, like, hanging out in a cave mining.
Why? I understood that she's probably going to, like, have some of the Dothraki help, because she said that you can have everything that you need, and the Dothraki aren't doing anything except sitting around.
That's a good point. Well, we'll get to the Dothraki.
Someday we'll get to the
They're not doing any
Dothraki.
mining anytime soon.
The Dothraki.
Fuck me, yeah. I think the only other thing about the cave scene that I wanted to point out was the Mance Raider callback, where Dany specifically says, what's more important, your survival or your people's survival or your pride or something like that. It's exactly what Jon says to Mance in the episode that Mance is burned to death.
Yeah.
I liked that a lot because it almost feels like it justifies all of Mance Raider being in the show. You know what I mean? Because we've seen Jon have these conversations and all that, when he's presented with this question again, like when it's flipped on him, we, the audience, go, oh, yeah, okay, cool. Like, it's drawing on this pool of stuff that it has. And they didn't need to explicitly have Jon go, I once said that to a guy named Mance Raider. It's just there, and it exists, and they don't have to say that in the dialogue. So I thought that was a very nice
sure.
little throwback thing. Especially since Mance Raider is
Rhaegar?
Danny's brother, Rhaegar.
Right.
So that's
even more important.
Speaking of people with good hearts.
This is a Dany segue? Is this her finding out about Casterly Rock?
Oh, yeah. Oops, I segued the wrong thing. Yeah, Tyrion.
Or
speaking of good hearts, Tyrion has a good heart.
Yeah, Saint Tyrion arrives on the scene.
Speaking of rocks.
Yeah, speaking of rocks, Tyrion brings news of the Casterly one. Meek Tyrion, who was kind of crapping himself a little bit. My plan's going fine. Don't worry, we can just keep doing it. It's great.
Now I imagine Tyrion as Morty when you said it. This is fine.
This is fine. Tyrion and Jon both telling Dany not to go to Westeros with her dragons to burn her way to victory.
Mm-hmm.
And the viewer is left with the impression that Dany is not going to take her dragons to Westeros because she has two advisors saying don't do it.
Yeah.
But, as we all know by the end of the episode, she ends up going to Westeros with Drogon. And personally, I felt that fake out worked really well because it really brought the surprise of Dany showing up in Westeros. Mm-hmm. It made an actual surprise because I didn't expect that to happen. I expected Dany to be like, okay, well, I won't go to Westeros with my dragons then.
So I agree that it's a fake out, but also there's a loophole. Because both Tyrion and Jon are like, you can't go around burning castles and burning King's Landing and all these innocent people. Yeah, Dany doesn't do that.
But he never said armies.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. There's a loophole in there, but I definitely fell for it when I was watching the episode that I didn't expect, the end of the episode to actually go about the way it did. The other interesting thing I found in that scene is that Dany starts to get really angry about all the grain that is being stolen from Highgarden and being taken back to King's Landing.
Yeah.
Just mention any of the gold that Highgarden apparently has in droves. During one of the scenes in the battle, it looks like that Dany just strafes the line of carts that are going back into King's Landing, and it seems like, and maybe it's not true, but it seems like it's all the grain that's going back there. So it sure seems like she's intentionally hitting the wagons pretty hard on her little thunder run going through the Lannister lines.
I don't think they're done with that. The next time on trailer had Varys telling Tyrion, he's like, we have to be able to control her or something like that. I feel like her going after the food either was her plan out of spite or wasn't her plan and Drogon was just going nuts.
And she didn't know the grain.
Well, that's true, I guess.
She was talking about the green coming from Highgarden, and it seemed like to be a setup for things that happened at the end of the episode.
Davos and Jon have better chemistry than than Jon and Dany.
Oh, I thought you were saying than Davos and Stannis. It's like everyone has better chemistry than Stannis and anyone.
Wrong.
That's the whole
Incorrect.
point.
Davos is trying so hard with Missandei, and she's like, she's got a boyfriend, he's got a wife.
Yeah, where is Davos' wife?
Where is Marya? Seriously.
I mean, I guess we know that Davos says in the books, he's like, I haven't been the most faithful, and I'm like, yeah, but we don't need to see you doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure she exists in the show.
He has a son, or he has...
Yeah, but she may have died in childbirth like every other mother. I'm getting the impression that Davos now is going to live to the end of the series and retire on a ship to Noth, because they keep name dropping in front of him. And it's like, just get on a boat already and go there. Why
And
don't
then the butterflies.
And then the butterfly.
Oh, yeah.
That's the spin-off right there. Davos versus the butterflies.
Well, there's one more arrival at Dragonstone this episode, and that is Theon Greyjoy, who Jon is mad at.
Rightfully so.
This was another one of those scenes like we were talking about earlier with the knowledge flow, where I was, as they were walking towards each other, I was like, okay, wait, what does Theon know about Jon now, and what does Jon know about Theon now? Like, how much do they know about each other?
Yeah.
I thought it was strange when Theon got off the boat that his personality was not like we last left him. He seemed to transition back into normal, like, Theon.
I'm surprised he didn't try to jump back in the water.
I kind of liked it and maybe this is just the book side of it, but, Theon just kind of looks really down on Jon in A Game of Thrones in the first few chapters of the book.
Yeah.
So he kind of resumes his whole, like, Theon role instead of Reek, where he seems to have left himself, maybe seeing Jon triggered himself out of his psychosis, so he becomes Theon once again for a brief moment before Jon.
like,
But he
knows how to act
doesn't feel
around Jon.
threatened by Jon.
Yeah.
And before he is threatened by Jon. Jon's like, I thought you were dead. And he missed the perfect opportunity with what is dead may never die.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, actually, yeah, you're right.
That would have been so
Yeah.
hardcore. That would have been so hardcore.
Well, I think that brings us to the main event. All of this has been but a preamble.
Pre-ramble.
No, the main event was the North. The main event was the Stark reunion.
We're going to what the producers are calling the Loot Train Battle, which is just about the dumbest ass name.
I still say that sounds like a Lego set.
Yeah, it does sound like a Lego set. I'm really liking the title we have in our planning document, which is The Rumble of the Rose Road.
You like that?
Although
Yeah.
I think they're on the... Are they on the Rose Road? Well, they're in the Canyon Lands.
Who knows
Yeah,
where
so
they are? No,
they're-
On anywhere we want to be on.
There's like some river next to him, but it's not. They imply because Tarly says something about they've gotten all the gold over the Blackwater
Yes.
Rush, so
Yeah.
they have to cross the Blackwater. Which, coming from where they are, coming up from the Reach, it would make sense that they're on the Rose Road. But the Blackwater Rush is really close to King's Landing.
Oh, yeah.
I guess in the show it's kind of ambiguous how close or far away the Blackwater is from King's Landing, because we have the shot from Olenna in season 5 when she approaches King's Landing where you can't see it right next to the city. So it might be like 50 miles or something south. It doesn't really make sense from a city construction point of view, but like maybe it's not close to King's Landing and it's just south of there. The landscape really doesn't match the terrain of the Crown Lands. It looks more like it should be close to Tumbleton, which is farther to the southwest.
Yeah.
So I have so many I mean, I feel like I have so many like logistics nits about where they actually are, but I feel like they're not worth really exploring. Because I mean, if so, the Dothraki have to land somewhere, right? So their most likely course they would land is, I don't know, south of the Blackwater, and then they would ride 600 miles across Westeros to hit them like at the Mander. It doesn't register to me as,
because of what Tarly says that they're pretty close, that they're going to get over the Blackwater Rush by nightfall or something, or that they're trying to get over it by nightfall. They're within like range of King's Landing. So Dany took her ships and she landed right beside King's Landing, and they're just south, like maybe 50 miles short of
I can
King's
see that.
Landing.
I mean,
So-
ultimately,
Yeah.
like, there's big canyons and rock fixtures. It's like, This is a location-based adventure that isn't connected to the road anywhere. It's just isolated ultimately. Like, we can try and logic it out, but they just didn't write it for. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why I don't really want to like talk about like where they actually are, because it doesn't matter.
They're right here. I'm putting in the video. They're right here. There we go.
Thank you. Oh wow, look at that.
So we've got the chat with Dickon.
Fancy Lad School, which is the best
Fancy Lad
line
School
in the whole episode.
Bronn gets all the best.
Died laughing when Jaime got his name wrong again.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, Dickon saying, I'm Dickon. And then Bronn just bursting into laughter just kills me every time I watch it. Like, it just...
What are you guys talking about? They did mention Rickon in this episode.
The look on the actor who plays Dickon's face makes that scene what it is. The scene got more serious as it progressed, and I found it to be my favorite scene of the entire episode. And it's really only a short scene where the way that when Jaime Bronn confronted Dickon and was like, "Oh, what do you think of the battle?" He's like, "Oh, it was glorious," you know. And then they said, "Oh, your father's not around. What did you really think of the battle?" And he says, "I didn't really expect it to smell like that." Really kind of brought it home to me. That scene, and it seemed very almost George R. R. Martin-y.
Mm-hmm.
George, back in like 2012, said, "I'm fascinated by war, brings out the best and the worst in people. Literature in the past used to celebrate the glory of war, and then the hippie generation of the 1970s wrote about the ugliness of it." And I think there's truth in both.
I'm just going to call George R. R. Martin out there and say that no, it preceded the hippie generation. The turn started after World War I with the modernists. But anyways, go on.
No, it was cool, and I gravitated towards it for personal reasons. I really empathized with Dickon, and I felt that this super minor character who may have 5 more lines for the rest of the season if he survived the battle, which we don't know for sure. I really felt a real connection to the character, and I think that it communicated really well some of the themes of the story that both George R. R. Martin and David Benioff and Dan Weiss have embedded into it, and it was great. I loved it.
So there's an interesting post that I saw from user More Steak Less Fanta, and
amazing.
I like both, but so anyway, so talking about this conversation, you know, how Bronn quips that he knew about that from the age of 5 and everything. It's like what you would expect from Bronn, but he says it reminds him of a conversation that it's Robert and Barristan Selmy and Jaime Lannister are having this conversation about fighting. Is a really good scene, as a lot of the just scenes in season 1 are, when people are just talking.
Yeah.
And they are talking about the first people they ever killed. Like their first blood, basically.
Right.
And Robert says that he killed in the battle a stupid Tarly boy.
Yes.
The quote, and I don't know if this is the direct quote, but in general, it's they never tell you how they all shit themselves.
Yep.
And so Robert mentions this, and that he was surprised by this, you know, when he was in his teens and had
he
killed
does
his
he
first.
does specifically say that stupid Tarly boy. I'd forgotten about that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
also love the
crazy.
way that Mark Addy, who's playing Robert Baratheon, does that little laugh after he talks about it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like a humorous laugh. It's like this really sad, and it's a fantastic little scene from season 1, and it's a great callback if they intended that as a callback, which maybe they did. It seems like they did.
Yeah.
Probably.
After that conversation sort of talking about war, and it felt just like a John Wayne movie with they hear the thunder of the hooves, and then they circle the wagons, and then you can hear the war whoops over the hill.
Yep.
Whoop.
And the terrain, like you were saying, with the rocks and the...
Yes, it's canyons, and it's absolutely a Wild West movie. And it has that same sort of tension that you get in Wild West movies, where whether it's gunslingers facing each other down or listening for the Indians coming across the plain. Here it comes, here it comes, here it comes, looking at the horizon. I don't know about you guys, but when that line of Dothraki appeared, I got goosebumps. That was fantastic.
The really cool thing about that, and again, George R. R. Martin has talked about how the Dothraki are not just the Mongols in a fantasy setting. He says, yes, I base them on the Mongols, but I also base them on the Alans, the Scythians, and the Native Americans. So to me, it felt like homage to Martin, how he said that the Dothraki are just not Mongols, they also have this Native American tradition, which is really, really cool. And I, the same thing, I felt this huge chill when the Dothraki appeared over the horizon. And with Jaime trying to run his soldiers up into a line and things like that, it was great.
Which reminds me, I think it would be a really interesting research angle, given that Gurm lives in New Mexico, to research some Native American myth and to see if it aligns any with the mythos of Westeros. But.
Yeah.
I mean, there
For
must
sure.
be some with like ravens and crows and trickster gods.
Yeah.
But
Crows and wolves are tight, and
yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I haven't seen anybody else mention it. But that when Bronn opens up the canopy of the scorpion, the way that he reaches up to pull the bolt out to open it up, that's reminiscent of like on trains when you reach up to pull
Oh, yeah.
or pull the brakes or stop it.
Uh-huh.
So I wasn't sure that they were going for that or that was just how it was designed. But I thought that was a very like neat little subtle thing that like made it feel like a Western more than you would expect. Because you never expect anybody to do that kind of emotion in a show like Game of Thrones for
That's a good
really
point.
anything.
It's very subtle.
Yeah.
It's the subtleties, not the gauche things we do.
It wasn't just the Dothraki appearing, though. It was the Dothraki charging, and then all of a sudden, the cry of Drogon over that kind of silences the music.
The
and,
look on Nikolai Coster-Waldau's face when the dragon screams is...
Yeah.
And Bronn's like, we got to get out of here. It reminds me also of like what Ed says back up to Jon at Hardhome, where he's like, we're gonna die here.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
ice
yeah.
and fire.
That's a
Like
good callback.
it's sort of a dualism.
Cartesian dualism.
Whoa.
Yeah, this is 100% Cowboys and Aliens, that movie with Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which of course harkens back more to that World War I thing I was talking about, with all this new technology, if you can call it dragon technology, and then
The
the
Scorpion.
giant scorpion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. The shot of him like looking through the crosshairs at Drogon, that's a World War I thing. That's World War II. Yeah, that's super
It was very unnatural.
anti-aircraft gun.
Yeah, and like how Jaime's, compared to the Dothraki who are charging, the way Dothraki charge versus like, Jaime's troops just like all get in line. I don't know how much of this is true. Like, Jeff, you're gonna have to verify this. But it's like in World War One, like apparently the French were really lagging behind the rest of the world of Europe in warfare, and they were still like wearing red. They were still lining up.
So one of the things that they talk about in World War One is that the French army of 1914 essentially looked the same as the French army looked in the Franco-Prussian War, which had occurred 40 years before. The same uniforms, the same formations that they would march in, the same tactics that they would use, whereas technology had moved well beyond 1860s, 1870s. I think the Franco-Prussian War was 1870, if memory serves. And it gradually that changed. And one of the things they talk about is that the French wore soft caps until like 1916, which was crazy when you have all this freaking artillery fire going. You need to protect your noggin. The thing that really struck me as well about that scene was the Lannister soldiers lining up, and I think they had that shot of that one guy that just looked just freaking terrified.
Yeah, that was great. By the small actor, too.
Yeah.
Like, just a small extra bringing a lot to the scene. You gotta love it.
Yeah.
And so props to him. I hope he gets roles in the future that are beyond extra roles.
Shaking.
He's quivering like they're standing with a spear against a dragon. Like, how crazy is that? And like, you don't have any option to run away at that point either.
Yeah.
You have to face your own death, and you can really kind of feel the way that soldier felt in that moment. And of course, he's burned like the next second, right? He's one of the groups of soldiers. At least it seems the scene transitions to Drogon then burning the soldiers that are there.
That is, I mean, even without the dragons, they're Dothraki screamers. Like, one of their major tactics is fear.
Yeah, right. I wanted to draw a comparison because there's that shot, right, of the soldier quivering in Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, during the Charge of the Rohirrim, at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. There's a shot of the orcs, like, shaking in their boots and looking scared and stuff. And that's an unambiguously triumphant moment, right? Like, the orcs look scared, and that's good. But in Game of Thrones, it's like a human being.
Yeah, that scene where the Dothraki talks to Tyrion about how their people can't fight, right? He has that line. And I was thinking about this, is that your average Lannister soldier is probably just a plowboy that's like put a spear into his hand.
Yeah.
You talk about, Septon Maribald's like thing where you put a spear into a guy's hand and you send him into battle. Like, that's the extent of the training these guys have. These aren't people that live generation to generation in constant warfare like the Dothraki are.
Right.
These are just like small folk that are drafted into the army and then forced to fight against an impossible enemy and against impossible odds. And it really, that line irritated me, and I think it was supposed to irritate me. Because you feel for these guys, these Lannister soldiers who are the bad guys, the quote unquote bad guys of the series. You really empathize with them, and it's great. I think it's
you have Tyrion right there to be the analog for that within the story.
That, and we got the Ed Sheeran scene with humanizing the Lannister soldiers, which, I mean, that was a lot to do with Arya, but it kind of comes back here for me. Like, these guys who were talking about the end of the war and going home.
I did wonder tactically why Jaime lined his men up in front of the wagons. I was thinking that it would probably be better to line them up behind the wagons so it would break the charge, but that's a tactical nit on my part.
Gotta circle
probably
the
also
wagons.
didn't have time.
Fighting was never their forte. I wonder, like, if there's somebody that's going to come along and destroy the Dothraki next, they're going to be like, they were terrible at fighting.
It's just
It's gonna be the Night King. He's going to be speaking in Scroth or whatever the...
Oh, that was beautiful, Aaron.
That's my Scroth.
We're not allowed to... So you said a word in there that we're not allowed to...
have on iTunes.
So you can bleep that part out. But
To take it back to the discussion we were having before, after the Lannisters are burned, is that how Dany then strafes the wagons going up the road as well.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that was intentional, a callback to when Dany was talking about how the grain was stolen from Highgarden.
I guess she made a decision to deprive King's Landing of the grain, and so she decided to roast it. Roasted nuts.
I mean, she also might not have known carts.
What else would have been in the carts?
I mean, it's called a loot train. I don't know. When I think loot, I don't think food. I'm like, oh yes, loot. Lots of jewelry and goldses.
A musical instrument, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that as well.
True.
I kind of feel like it was her getting caught up in the moment and just being like, yeah, woohoo!
Yeah,
and then
it could be it too.
Maybe next episode she's gonna be like, heck, really shouldn't have done that one.
Yeah, I mean, we see Dany making mistakes.
Because come on, if you're writing it, like, you saw how awesome that shot was of her strafing the wagon train. Like, if you got the chance to do that, who among us?
Yeah,
well, maybe none of us, but. It's all because dragons plant no trees.
Really, it is, though.
It is.
It really is. Which is how it's going to go down in the books.
I saw a lot of people saying, like, well, this battle's clearly never happening in the books, and probably not exactly like this, but there's definitely going to be something where Dany goes way overboard on her dragon and ruins a lot of people's lives. That's inevitable.
There's going to be a Field of Fire 2.0 of some sort.
Yeah.
We've already seen her accept fire and blood, and, like you said, dragons plant no trees. Like, the idea that she doesn't, and the idea that she doesn't have this PR problem, like, it's more set up in the books that she will. Like, that's more, like, telegraphed than it is in the show.
Yeah.
Well, because presumably they're going to have somebody take over Westeros who is not like Cersei and who is actually somewhat well-liked.
So,
like Aegon?
Yeah.
Maybe he'll have the Golden Company, too.
His sweet golden bob.
Word.
There's definitely elements of the books that they're giving to Cersei and the Lannisters this season that will be Aegon's in the books.
Yeah.
Like the haircut.
Like the haircut.
So Bronn gets his own sort of tracking shot in this episode, similar to Jon's in the Battle of the Bastards.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of nice that they're showing it off for the minor characters.
Right.
Good action scene in for Jerome Flynn.
I actually like this one a lot more than I liked the one in Battle of the Bastards, because that one felt too like World War II landing on Omaha Beach, which didn't really feel real in a medieval sense, whereas here, when it's just Bronn, there are just a couple of people that are around him in this chaos, because it's portrayed as like there's this huge class of like an Indian attack, almost of like nothing but horse infantry. It's not. They're in standard battle formation. So the chaos in that moment, it was less people, and the chaos was heightened.
Fewer.
I hate you. So it felt more real. It felt more real, and I liked his little fight against random Dothraki dude.
Also, man, it was so nice that it wasn't just gray.
Oh.
Yeah, like all the having
the
the warm colors was
You had
cool.
like the Boltons
Beautiful.
versus the Wildlings. Everything is gray.
Yeah.
And here you have the Lannisters with the red and the gold. You have the fire. You have the earthy browns. You have the Dothraki, right?
The
It's
green
like,
fields that are suddenly like black. I think you're right. That was something really nice about this battle, was the color.
Amazing. There's a lot of talk in this episode about that place that Bronn comes from. Bronn jumps on the scorpions. Is Bronn a secret Corgyle?
What?
Because they have scorpions.
Jesus,
Ooh.
Moses and Mary. What a ridiculous
subtle
thing.
nuance.
Your theories this episode
How's
have just
Corgyle
been
and Dorne?
incredible. So wait, could he be a bastard son of Lord Commander Corgyle of the Night's Watch, who was the LC before Mormont?
Oh, then that's why he went
Wait, it
beyond the
could be.
wall in the show?
It really could be.
Yeah. Oh my god, he could be.
Oh boy, guys.
Bronn Corgyle. Well, Bronn Sand, I guess. That's why he and Tyene get along so well.
10-part
Yeah.
essay
That's why he
series?
wants the bad.
No. No.
Didn't finish.
So the scorpion that Bronn fires and misses Dany for the first time and then fires again, then hits Drogon. The scorpion is actually a historical weapon. It's a really cool weapon, too, that has a history that goes back to Roman times. They were used for precision shots, and Julius Caesar in his Gallic campaign talks about how he was able to fire the scorpion and could hit precise targets up to 100 meters
Damn.
and could shoot parabolic and hit targets up to 400 meters with a little bit less accuracy and precision, but still a pretty deadly weapon with a lot of strength behind it.
Yeah.
They talk about how the bolt from a scorpion could pierce a wooden or metal shield and then could impale the soldier behind the shield. So it makes sense that Qyburn would say, this might be the weapon we need to take down a dragon, because you're thinking about the force of the impact and how it can drive through metal or very hard wood and then hit something behind him with enough force to kill them or wound them. It seems to me that it's a really effective weapon against Drogon, and now that Dany knows that the Lannisters have this weapon, she may be averse to using her dragons as much, and
Maybe,
that might
yeah.
be something we'll see in future episodes.
Also, and The Hobbit, and there's a thread about how Drogon does get injured by the scorpion. And I think, like, some people thought we were retreading ground, or they didn't like it because they felt that it spoils something in the books. But I think, in my opinion, it was something that the show did to remind us, because some people might have forgotten about what happened in Doznak's Pit, where Drogon was pierced by a spear, up close, to show that dragons are not invincible.
Yeah.
And then, so this user, Shrug Life Forever, in the thread, Drogon versus Khal Drogo, says, with Drogon becoming injured in the most previous episode, all I can think about is how Drogo died. A slightly deep cut to the shoulder was all it took to take down the unbeatable Khal. So they're wondering if maybe, the fates of the two are tied, and that Drogon, like Drogo, dies from that injury,
Ooh.
getting infected, etc. But
Yeah.
Well, he's not going to tear off his poultice.
I don't know.
Are they going to get one of the cones like dogs have to keep them from messing with their wounds?
yes. I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
After he got shot, Drogon was like, Mom, it hurts, get it out.
So
George has implied in the books that this isn't how dragons are going to take, bolts like this, because he said before that the dragons in his books are more invincible than this, because you have to hit it right in the eye.
that's true.
There aren't
Was
weak
it the
points
eye or in the
at
mouth?
all.
There was a quote about them getting hit in the mouth or something.
the one that died in Dorne, was it Meraxes who died in Dorne?
Yes.
Yeah, she died to an eye shot, or it died to an eye shot.
And then there's the dragon pit incident during the
Oh,
dance.
good point. Yeah.
So for a split second there, Bronn's shot was fired with Drogon's mouth wide open, and I thought for a moment that the bolt was going to go through Drogon's mouth and that would have killed him.
Yeah. I wonder if in the books we might get a similar kind of scenario where you have someone shooting a scorpion like this at one of Dany's dragons, but it's the Dornish who are allied with Aegon. Because in the history, obviously, it's the Dornish who take out one of Aegon the Conqueror's dragons with a big old crossbow bolt, basically. And as Aaron mentioned, the Corgyles are scorpions, so we've got that going for us. But really, I wonder if this isn't something that, in a small way, is sort of being adapted. Just the Dornish might have this sort of weapon to take out a dragon, or to try to.
Scorpion as an animal just seems more like a desert animal, since we're going all in on that with
Totally.
the Dornish.
Never mind, that's what it was. Septon Barth ruled out that dragons were vulnerable through their mouths. He said that death comes out of a dragon's mouth, but death does not go in that way. I don't know how he figured that out.
Yeah, Barth, what were you doing?
George has specifically mentioned that, Tolkien's has a dragon with, a weak belly, and it's mentioned somewhere, in the World of Ice and Fire or something, where he's like, well, it's the myths they tell are not true. Dragons, they have hard scales and you can't go through them. So, yeah, I think this was just a way to get Dany on the ground for an equalizing moment.
That being said, one of the dragons in the dragon pit, Shrykos, is killed by Hob the Hewer, who jumps on the dragon's neck and drives his axe 7 times into the dragon's skull. And each time he calls out a name of the 7 gods, and it's on the last blow, the stranger, that his axe goes into its skull.
That's symbolism.
So they aren't, obviously that's like 7 blows from a huge man sitting on its neck and like wailing away with a big old axe. But I think George is willing to have them as invulnerable as he wants them to be for his purposes, which is how it is with everything,
For
right?
sure.
I mean, there's almost no hard and fast rules.
Yeah, I actually liked it quite a bit. I thought that the dragon that was going to get hit by the scorpion, I was expecting to be like 3 miles away, far up in the sky, and this was not. Like, Bronn missed the first time, and then he still didn't hit the dragon like where it really would have killed it. Here it's just like it's injured, and it gets Dany down on the ground.
Where Jaime is faced with his choice.
A strong moment between 2 characters.
Yeah.
And we also established what won't work, that whole flurry of arrows heading most likely towards Daenerys, but Drogon, as user Lemon Wizard points out, the dragons are a smart animal, and Drogon quickly lifts up, so his belly full of scales catches the onslaught of arrows, and then they all just bounce off. So.
Like arrows off a dragon's belly.
Ah, yes, as they say.
Like water off a duck's back. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, shouldn't Dany have some sort of harness or something? I mean, she has Tyrion, who's a famous saddle maker.
He made one saddle.
Well, I mean,
she doesn't in dance. She learns to train him by.
That's true.
I guess, I don't know, tapping him or something.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't have a harness.
And it is genuinely cooler to have her just hopping on and barebacking it. But yeah. Jaime charges straight at Dany. I like how she's doing battlefield medicine on Drogon. She's stopped to yank out the spear. She is buff. She is ripped.
that's not what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, trying to pull out a spear, it's not exactly...
Well, that's what she did in Daznak's pit, and that's how she burned her hands in the books where she is vulnerable to fire and heat.
But Jeff can attest to this. She doesn't know what the barb is like on the end of that scorpion bolt, where her pulling it out like that could deal more damage.
Yes, and also
just leaving it in.
She's not going to be able to snap it off.
Well, she doesn't have gauze or anything like that to immediately patch the wound to prevent bleeding from.
The world's biggest cotton ball. Yeah.
You would need something to staunch the bleeding.
You have to strap a whole lamb.
Yes, she puts a whole sheep. Maybe she just grabs one of the men on the battlefield and she just puts him on there.
Oh my
just
god.
Stay there.
Cauterize your own wound.
I guess, yeah, you can cut.
Actually, well, yeah, maybe dragons cauterize instantly. Just like lightsabers.
They have smoking blood and everything.
True.
Yeah, their blood
true,
does smoke.
true.
I saw some people speculate that the lance was poisoned.
Oh, the one that Bronn shot.
It is coming from Qyburn.
Could be. And Qyburn presents Cersei with the poison for Ilaria at the last episode.
That's true.
Too, right? So he's obviously has a very strong interest in knowledge in poison. So
And makeup.
What color do you think Drogon would turn if it was the Strangler? Because obviously he can't turn purple.
Oh.
Yeah.
Never mind. That's a dumb question.
So I think the context of it was talking about Oberyn's lance and whether Oberyn's lance was poisoned when he stabbed the mountain. And of course, Qyburn was able to bring the mountain back from that if it was poisoning. So, and he was able to reverse engineer the poison that killed Myrcella. So,
Yeah.
Scorpions do have stingers.
right, that are poisonous.
tips.
Scorpion. Yeah.
There was, there was some support
Interesting.
there.
And then it would be like Drogo dying from a wound.
Yeah. I feel like the whole reason they put Tyrion in this scene was just to have him be the audience proxy for Jaime charging. Be like, no, don't do it.
You've got Jaime, this knight, on a horse
Or in the books.
Yeah.
with a lance, charging at a dragon.
Yep.
Right? Except for he's not going to save the princess. The dragon belongs to the princess, and the princess is trying to kill him.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's totally it's so high fantasy. You have this knight.
Like St. George.
Exactly. Yeah, St. George. But everything's totally just backwards and inside out. And St. George is actually an incest twin who murders little boys and old women.
Jaime is faced with the decision to whether to charge Daenerys and Drogo. And a few scenes before, Bronn is faced with a similar decision whether to grab his bag of gold that just fell off his horse or to pursue trying to kill the dragon. So I feel like it's an intentional paralleling of these two warriors having to make a choice, and both of them choose, I guess you can call it the honorable path, right? In terms of what they choose their duty.
Well, honor got immolated.
Oh, jeez.
True. Okay.
It's a no chance. It's a no chance and no choice moment for them, right? It's Brienne at the inn. It's Jaime looking at this insurmountable odds and going, well, someone's got to do it.
A lot of yeah, exactly. It is very Jaime.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know that there's a user, Barristan the Bold 61, who talks about how Jaime's charge might have been prompted by him seeing echoes of the Mad King, but I don't think it's that. I think that it's like within that thread, user Chunky Sue says that
We've had some great names this cast.
or is it no? It might actually Chunky 5U.
Chunk
Because
5.
it's a 5, but I
Chunky
think
Sue would be better,
but I think it might be Sue, but like the S is spelled with a 5.
Oh yeah.
So that's how I'm interpreting it. Anyways, but like Jaime does the exact same thing at the Whispering Wood. It's not like necessarily that he sees flashes of madness. It's like, this is what Jaime does. He's gonna go headlong straight in for the dumb move that might get him killed and / or captured.
Yeah.
That eventually leads to him losing his hand.
So much for the Whispering Wood lessons.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, like, the last time he did something stupid like this, he, like, lost his hand, maybe Jaime will lose something else this time. And I'm really hoping that what he loses...
His big toe.
Nope, those were not... I was really hoping he would finally just lose his love in Cersei, but, you guys do you.
Oh.
You do you.
That makes more sense than his wiener.
You were totally setting that up as a body part, though.
That is a good point. Like, someone pointed out, I can't remember who it was on Twitter somewhere on the night of, so it was happening so fast. But someone pointed out that his Lannister armor is literally weighing him down in the last scene. I know we're sort of jumping right to him drowning, but like, it's not exactly subtle. Like, he's being dragged down into the water by his Lannister connections and his Lannister armor that he's wearing for Cersei.
Oh.
It's cool.
Here I was just thinking Victorian Greyjoy, but yeah, I like that.
It's okay because he's got plot floaties.
Yeah, there's no armor stronger than plot armor.
That was thanks to our mod Clarky for that one.
Clarky.
There's a guy around there in the water whose livelihood depends on that guy living, who's drowning. So
yeah,
I don't think we have not seen the last of Jaime for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the inside the episode, which they were giving us some insight into this battle at the end here, and so DB Weiss goes on to say, you have a principal character trying to murder another principal character, and that doesn't happen all too often. Except that then I was like, that happens all the time on this show.
Cersei killed Robert in season 1. Joffrey killed Ned in season 1. Dany smothered Drogo in season 1. Stannis killed Renly in season 2. Olenna and Littlefinger killed Joffrey in season 4. Brienne fought Sandor in season 4. Tyrion killed Shae and Tywin in season 4. Waiting for the Books killed Aemon in season 5. Stannis and Mel killed Shireen in season 5. Brienne killed Stannis in season 5. And then Ramsay killed Roose in season 6. And then Ramsay was killed by Sansa in season 6. Cersei killed the Tyrells in season 6. And then just last episode, Jaime killed Olenna. So, like, whatever. What do you want?
Yeah, I don't understand why they said that.
And then Weiss brought up that this is the first battle where you're rooting for both sides.
Blackwater! Like, I can't believe they said in the inside the episode.
I guess we're not supposed to be rooting for Stannis.
Yeah, that's how they view it, and that's how they presented him.
Which is ridiculous. But that's the thing, is even in that battle, you have Davos and his poor son who gets incinerated. Like, I don't know. It was just a dumb thing for them to say. They just weren't thinking, and they included it inside the episode.
Yeah.
But it's dumb for them to say that it's the first time we've had people on both sides of a battle that we're rooting for. Because everyone was rooting for Ramsay in the battle. Oh, no, wait, that's...
I mean, in this battle, yes, they did a really good job humanizing it and everything. And I care about Jaime and Bronn as characters now, but if I'm going to pick, I'm going to be able to pick a side to root for. I'm not rooting for Cersei.
Yeah.
Just
Right,
not.
there's a difference between rooting for the sides and being like, oh, shoot, I hope everyone survives, but I hope Dany wins this one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was
For
willing
sure.
to let Bronn die for Drogon.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we should talk.
Yeah.
We really should talk about
How
that. though.
Bronn should just be a dead man. But-
Jeff was ready for it. I saw Jeff
Yeah.
say that on Twitter.
Bronn should have freaking died, man.
Just felt like his time.
Like, what is his narrative purpose in the story? I don't think he's really had much of a narrative purpose besides to be the quirky sidekick for a long time now.
Since ever. Yeah.
So, since ever, right? But so but he's a fan favorite character, right? So you have this major battle where you have thousands of soldiers being burned to death, being clubbed to death, being cut open, being run over by carts, and having all sorts of terrible things happen to them. But you don't kill any named characters in, at least as far as we know, in the episode itself. And for me, was the only drawback for the episode is that they had some real stakes, they had some real consequences and losses. But they couldn't pull the trigger to have someone like Bronn die, or someone like even Randall Tarley or Dickon Tarley.
Yeah.
People who are named characters end up buying it in the episode. It didn't feel cheap.
Mm-hmm.
It felt incomplete, I think is the best way I can put it.
Mm.
In some ways, it reminded me. It felt like Barristan, in season 5, episode 4, because some of the same music played while Jaime was having the dragon fly around him there. The music somewhat tricks you into evoking this emotion because you remember it from these other times. Remember that scene that Grey Worm was saved by Barristan, but Barristan still died.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that Bronn is out of the waters. He could have been injured and have a severely burned leg, or gotten shot by an arrow that nobody saw that he has next episode or something.
Right.
That it's a fatal wound.
He loses his hand. Yeah.
All because he did the right thing and left the gold sitting there.
Actually, that would be hilarious if he lost his hand and then he got a gold hand and he and Jaime just high five all day.
High five.
Clunk,
Clunk.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'll know the moment when Bronn dies. The moment that they finally promise him his castle
That's true.
and his wife. You know how it's always in movies. You're you've got the police officer or detective. He's yeah, I'm about to retire in 3 days.
Get one
And
day left.
Yeah, got 1 day left, and I bought my what are these trailers and stuff.
Yeah.
and
My
I'm gonna
vacation
go-
home.
Exactly, and then they die.
Ticket to fancy lad school.
Exactly. When that happens to Bronn. That's when he dies.
Yeah.
In his defense, he wouldn't have gotten where he is if he weren't a good fighter.
That's true. He does say that.
But I mean, what is being a good? What can you? It's like being a good fighter against the nuclear holocaust.
Yeah.
How does being a good fighter really impact anything?
Yeah, no. That's
In
statistics.
the battle itself.
It's statistics at that point.
He wasn't in the main line, so
It sort of goes against the idea that there are no old, bold sellswords, right?
Yeah. But he was pretty bold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did love how they shot the last couple of scenes in there, how you saw the fire open up and Jaime's reaction.
Yes.
And I did like how Bronn just sort of came out of nowhere and saved him. Just the directing of that entire sequence, how it felt completely like a breath of fresh air compared to
A breath of hot
Euron's
air.
attack.
A fire.
Yeah, no, that
Exactly. Euron's attack on
the fleet.
The Iron Fleet. There were so many more longer cuts,
Yes.
and I could tell spatially what was going on, even though a giant thing was flying around super fast in the sky. Whereas they couldn't even hold the camera on Euron just coming down on the Corvus in one single cut.
Mm-hmm.
In
Yeah.
that scene, on a stage, they had everything that was very small. And here you've got all these people running around. You got cameras up on these rigs, and it was just phenomenal how they shot this.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
This was the first time that I was able to watch the dragon and forget that it was CGI.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah. I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even think about that, but that's true.
I mean, every other time they've shown the dragons, my brain has been and there's the CGI. And this scene, I forgot that they weren't dragons.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. And I'll be honest with you, even stuff like big budget movies like the Hobbit movies, Smaug looks fake as hell compared to Drogon.
Yes.
And I mean, obviously those are a little more cartoony and wacky, but yeah, I don't know, that there was something about the acting and the effects of setting all those people on fire maybe just connecting the physical
Yeah.
to the CGI that really
They had
worked.
a really good tennis ball on a stick for this one.
Exactly. It was a huge tennis ball.
They threw it up in the air.
Yes.
What was Smaug like in those movies? Because I haven't seen
Ditto.
it.
Benedict
like-
Cumberbatch.
Maybe it's like a basketball. Oh, I don't know.
Did he speak?
Oh yeah, Smaug speaks.
Yeah, he spoke.
Oh, I did not
Hello,
know.
little Hobbit. Yeah.
Did he like perform stand up on the side? Let's see my one night show.
Also, I wanted to point out, because I don't know how many people pay attention to this, but this episode was directed by Matt Shakman, who is best known for directing a ton of episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Really?
He is, yeah, this was his first Game of Thrones foray. He's an EP on It's Always Sunny.
Obviously, a show known for its dragon CGI.
Well, it's hilarious because you would never expect an It's Always Sunny director to give us, like, that field of fire battle, but they did it.
Nailed it, dude.
There were no shots in this episode like the last one where I felt like something was missing. Everything, like he sold Brienne fighting Arya when Arya was like, it was choreographed so that Arya would match her, but she really couldn't because of the size difference and that sort of thing. But it was shot really well, every single scene.
Yeah.
And the look that he got off, like, what's his... Isaac Hempstead Wright, like when he looked up and said chaos is a ladder, like all that stuff was just really amazing. This may have been one of the best directed episodes of Game of Thrones in a long time.
I mean, yeah.
Mhm.
He's
What's
So-
the director's name again?
Matt Shakman.
Matt Shakman.
Yeah.
I think if it's.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I was listening to History of Westeros right before this, and if I'm remembering right, like that, they were talking about how that guy directed some It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episodes, so a lot of the ways that this episode does a good job of callbacks is because, like, It's Always Sunny does a lot of callbacks, and, like, it's a cornerstone of comedy in general to do callbacks. That's how you create game and comedy.
Davos was funnier this episode than he's ever been, I think. Like, his little lines about, like, is it King John or King Snow? Like, that kind of stuff. That was really funny.
Yeah.
Maybe a good way to close out the episode is this in your guys' top 5 or episodes
Wow.
of Game of Thrones ever?
No.
Is it just
Yes.
because I've been so waiting for this that it was really good?
This is definitely in
I
my
don't
top
know.
10. I don't know about top 5, but definitely top 10.
I just don't remember individual episodes like everyone else does.
Well, like,
I had
I'm
that
thinking
problem.
about episodes like Blackwater, and then there's Kiss by Fire, which is just, like, an incredible episode
Yeah,
that has the Sandor and Beric fight.
Baelor.
Baelor's a good episode, yeah.
Yeah, the last time I felt this way was Hard Home.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
I would say this surpasses Hard Home. I think it's an episode.
yeah, I
I
agree
do,
with
but I
that.
think that was the
Mhm.
last time that, like,
Mhm.
I felt energized.
I think this might be the detractor side of me coming out, but I feel like that this episode was really, really good, but it stands out in my mind because the episodes preceding it for a while haven't felt as good as earlier seasons, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Like when we gave our rating last time, I think some of you guys were too high on your little grade scores. You gave too many bananas.
It might be, yeah.
It doesn't give you room to grow.
You gave it an A.
You gave it an apple.
Initially.
On the curve,
On a
A
curve,
curvy
right.
apple.
which I now have to adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would rank this one as a solid an apple. I would give it an apple. A 1 on the binary scale for sure.
I don't know what scale we're using.
A to C
Apples
minus, right?
to dingoes.
Apple to dingo.
But how is it with rice?
Yeah, that's true. How is it with rice?
Yeah, that's right. We are a Reddit cast.
Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat, SF cereal, Pharrell
Ding ding.
equals LF Littlefinger.
So Michael gives it an apple.
Yeah, I'll give it an apple.
Fat Waldo.
Apple.
Apples, bananas, coconut, dingo.
You could also give it like a banana plus if you want,
Banana split?
But what if I like coconuts as a food more than all the other ones you've just mentioned? Not that I've
coconuts-
ever eaten dingo.
Coconuts match some of the most of the physiological characteristics for being a mammal. They have hair and milk. I'm just saying. So that's. Anyway, I gave it an apple. Fat Walda's reduced incomprehensibility. Eliana likes coconuts. Aaron, where are you at?
I haven't thought about it. I was too busy explaining the rating system.
We're the worst. We're the worst.
Worst podcast.
A minus.
Apple minus. Great. Jeff, where are you at?
Guys, why do you listen? Why does anyone listen to us?
I don't know. Too many.
I give it an apricot.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Apricots are better than
Apricot.
apples. I will attest.
You know
to
what? I
that.
give it a pluot because I really like plums. The plum and apricot hybrid. It's really tasty. You got to try it.
House plum is a good house too.
I give it a Maynard plum out of plum.
Really, we should rate it based on our own predications. So I think it should be how many chains does Eliana give it?
I mean, but like, it's a binary scale. It's like a chain, or also there's no chains, or 2 chains. So it's like really just like I don't know.
Did you see that article I sent you?
No.
How 2 chains
Sometimes.
apparently sometimes wears 3 or 4 chains to bed.
I hate this. I feel lied to.
Can I give it an aardvark?
Totally.
That's a pretty high.
Like Arthur?
You do you.
That's pretty high ranking. By the 7, it's time to wrap it up. I have been Bookshelfstud, also known as Michael.
I have been Eliana, also known as Glass Table Girl.
I've been Jeff, otherwise known as BryndenBFish.
Aaron AdmiralKird.
I had something for this.
Was it your name? Keep that in. But cut me saying keep that in. No, leave that in too, actually.
No, leave that in, yeah.
Oh. Okay.
This is where people have just left us playing in the background.
Yeah.
They don't.
People have fallen asleep by this point.
Yep,
So
exactly.
And I'm Fat Welda.
thank you guys so much for listening to another...
No, you're not. You're just big bone.
Son of... Thank you for listening. I'm going to mute all of you guys. And do the outro. Thank you for listening to another thrilling episode of The Quill and an evening at the Quill and Tankard with your favorite moderators from the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, where you can find all of this. You can find us also on iTunes and Google Play. You can visit our website at maestermonthly.wordpress.com. Follow us on Twitter, definitely, because we're very funny. Twitter at maestermonthly. And of course, you can always find us moderating the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. Don't forget to leave a nice comment. If you leave a mean comment, we'll ban you from the subreddit. And smash that like button. Thank you all for listening. Thanks to our tireless editor, Aaron. And we will see you next time.